5:45 near Sedan, France. A thick fog, rising from the Meuse River, blankets the rolling hills and scattered forests. German forces, having swiftly advanced through Belgium, pause to regroup. Field guns, 77 millimeters and 105 millimeters, capable of firing 15 to 18 rounds per minute with a range of up to 12 kilometers, are strategically positioned along the ridges. Soldiers, soaked from the previous night's rain, tighten their gear, adjust their helmets, and peer warily through the dense fog. Supply wagons groan under the weight of ammunition, rations, and medical supplies. Engineers work feverishly to repair bridges over swollen streams. The Schlieffen Plan, so promising on paper, now faces the harsh realities of the terrain and the unexpected resilience of the French. The fog conceals more than just a landscape. It hides the French army, reforming its lines at a pace that surpasses German intelligence estimates. By 6:20, scouts report movement along the opposite bank. French cavalry, sabers drawn, probes the German advance, signaling stiff resistance and slowing their progress. A lieutenant observed with concern, "Their lines are deeper than expected. Speed is no longer our ally." Communication proves intermittent, as telegraph lines are severed by shell fire or acts of sabotage. German commanders struggle to maintain their meticulously planned timing, but the rain-soaked and cratered terrain, scarred by earlier skirmishes, disrupts their formations. Tension mounts as men settle into shallow trenches, barely 2 meters deep, camouflaged with mud and reeds, awaiting the brutal reality of the first major engagement. Artillery opens fire at 6:45, the sharp cracks of 105 millimeters rounds echoing across the valleys. The intense barrage aims to soften French positions, but the defenders, entrenched in zigzag trenches with overlapping fields of fire, manage to endure the onslaught. Casualty rates begin to climb. A full company can lose a third of its strength before even reaching the first line of defense. Soldiers clutch letters and photographs, small, personal talismans connecting them to their distant homes. Corporal Muller holds a photo of his younger sister, whispering her name as he advances into the fray. Smoke and dust drastically reduce visibility, forcing units to rely on shouted commands, whistles, and basic hand signals for coordination. The battlefield, once a predictable theoretical exercise, transforms into a chaotic, living entity fueled by fear and courage. By 8 o'clock, the German army is fully committed. Infantry advances in waves, only to be cut down by machine gun nests, Maxim MG-08S firing at a devastating rate of 450 rounds per minute, which shred the leading ranks. French 75 millimeters field guns maintain their relentless pace of 16 rounds per minute, creating a continuous storm of steel. Barges lift and fall, sometimes landing dangerously close to German troops. Engineers struggle to breach the barbed wire entanglements, often under concentrated fire. The terrain itself becomes a formidable obstacle. Shell-cratered fields, flooded trenches, and collapsed bridges impede movement and diminish morale. A poignant scene unfolds as Private Schreiber retrieves a letter from a fallen comrade. The paper is muddy and torn, yet still legible. A few lines describing home, family, and hope. He carefully tucks it into his pocket as a silent tribute before sprinting forward under the incessant machine gun fire. Moments like this punctuate the relentless advance, reminding the men of their shared humanity amidst the surrounding chaos. Officers bellow orders to maintain cohesion, but confusion reigns. Formations begin to fragment. German logistics, designed for a swift and decisive envelopment, falter under the combined pressure of fierce enemy resistance and the challenging environment. By 9:30, the first critical engagement erupts near the village of Dinant. German battalions converge on French positions entrenched along the ridges. Artillery barges attempt to suppress the defenders, but the French trenches, often 2 meters deep, zigzag, and well-reinforced, absorb much of the impact. Barbed wire and other obstacles force German soldiers into deadly kill zones, resulting in rapidly mounting casualties. Corporal Bauer notes grimly in his journal, "The plan assumes speed. But here, speed kills us." Human moments persist amidst the carnage. Soldiers share precious water, pass around chocolate, read letters aloud to each other, or whisper desperate prayers. By 11:15, the German advance begins to falter, showing clear signs of strain. Supply lines are overextended, units struggle with communication delays, and the French exploit their advantageous interior lines to reinforce threatened sectors. Orders from high command arrive sporadically, forcing field officers to improvise on the spot. Small victories, like capturing a forward trench, are quickly offset by swift counterattacks and mounting losses. Soldiers lean on one another for support, clutching personal mementos, a photograph, a letter, even a cherished toy, as talismans against the seeming randomness of death. By 12:30, the battle reaches a temporary lull. Artillery shells continue to fall sporadically, but weary soldiers snatch brief moments of rest in shell craters and abandoned farmhouses. The German army, once a precisely calibrated instrument of strategy, now operates in isolated fragments. Commanders confer amidst the smoke and debris, realizing that while the plan on paper called for a swift envelopment, the brutal reality on the ground demands improvisation, sheer endurance, and extraordinary human courage. The stage is now set for the next grueling phase, where chaos will truly test the limits of strategy and morale. 7:30 near Meaux, France. Rain continues to drizzle, leaving the field slick and treacherous underfoot. French forces, now fully mobilized, dig deeper into hastily constructed trenches. Each trench averages 2 meters in depth, zigzagging to minimize the impact of artillery strikes, with sandbags reinforcing key firing positions. German units, advancing relentlessly from the east, encounter the first major line of determined resistance. The battlefield is a desolate landscape of mud, water-filled craters, and shattered trees. Artillery exchanges begin anew. French 75mm guns firing at a rate of 16 rounds per minute, countered by German 105mm and 150mm guns attempting to suppress the enemy at 12 to 15 rounds per minute. Columns of smoke rise irregularly, mingling with the lingering morning fog, and the deafening roar of shellfire reverberates through the valley. By 8:15, fierce infantry clashes erupt in the villages scattered along the Marne. Machine guns, Maxim MG-08S and Hotchkiss 8mm, spray deadly bullets across the open fields at a rate of 400 to 450 rounds per minute. German soldiers attempt to storm forward, but barbed wire, deep trenches, and concentrated rifle fire significantly slow their advance. Lieutenant Weber attempts to signal his platoon using hand gestures and whistles, but widespread confusion reigns. Soldiers fall, clutching photographs and heartfelt letters, yet the living press onward, hearts pounding and lungs burning from exertion and fear. Explosions send mud and debris skyward, momentarily blinding men and masking the desperate cries of the wounded. The chaos intensifies rapidly at 9 o'clock. German units, stretched thin by their rapid maneuvers, find themselves confronting the complex and well-prepared French defensive network. Accurate artillery targeting is hampered by thick smoke and the shifting front lines. A shell crater becomes a temporary refuge. Soldiers huddle together, anxiously checking their comrades for injuries. Corporal Lang scribbles a grim note in his journal. The plan assumes order. Here, there is only chaos. Every step is a gamble between life and death. Officers shout orders through the deafening din, but signals are easily lost or misinterpreted. Improvised tactics become dominant. Small groups attempt flanking maneuvers, dig furiously for cover, and provide covering fire for each other, relying on raw instinct as much as calculated strategy. The human element persists. Amidst the relentless turmoil, moments of profound humanity punctuate the brutal violence. A medic kneels over a wounded soldier, carefully applying a bandage despite the intermittent bursts of gunfire. Another soldier generously shares his chocolate ration with a trembling comrade. Letters are passed along, read aloud briefly for encouragement before being carefully tucked away again. The battlefield is both a cold, uncaring machine and a landscape of fragile flesh, a place of calculated precision and widespread panic. Casualty rates rise alarmingly. Entire companies are reduced to skeletal formations. German units advance with grim determination only to fall back under fierce French counterattacks. Supply issues exacerbate the already chaotic situation. Ammunition runs critically low, food and water are scarce, and medical personnel are overwhelmed by the sheer number of casualties. By 11 o'clock, the French orchestrate a coordinated counteroffensive. They exploit their interior lines and their intimate knowledge of the terrain, concentrating artillery and machine gun fire at key choke points. German forces, overextended and thoroughly exhausted, struggled desperately to maintain cohesion. Villages such as Nantul and Mo become the scenes of intense and brutal street fighting, with rifles firing from windows and rooftops and grenades tossed into dark cellars. Soldiers desperately cling to personal mementos, photographs, letters from home, personal trinkets, as if they can somehow draw strength from the cherished memories of home and loved ones. The chaotic ballet of life and death continues unabated, punctuated by the terrifying whistle of incoming shells and the agonized screams of the wounded. By 12:30, the battle reaches a feverish crescendo. German artillery fails to completely suppress the heavily fortified French lines. Infantry assaults are repelled repeatedly, each successive wave thinning the already depleted ranks. Soldiers, fatigued and soaked to the bone, dig in wherever they fall, transforming shallow ditches and craters into hastily constructed defensive positions. Lieutenant Weber observes with a growing sense of dread that communication breakdowns compound the already overwhelming chaos. Runners are shot down or lost in confusion. Telephone lines are severed by shellfire, and visual signals are obscured by the thick smoke. Yet the soldiers persist, driven forward by camaraderie, a sense of duty, and the basic human instinct for survival. Tactical improvisation becomes essential. As French forces push back relentlessly, German commanders attempt desperate adjustments, reallocating battalions, concentrating machine guns to maximize their effectiveness, and attempting to support exposed flanks with artillery fire. Some units manage to achieve temporary breakthroughs, capturing a farm or a heavily contested trench, only to be swiftly counterattacked and forced to retreat. The battlefield is a constantly shifting mosaic of ever-changing front lines, scattered debris, and remarkable human resilience. Mortar shells, ranging in size from 81 to 120 millimeters, explode irregularly, sending showers of dirt and deadly shrapnel into the air. Casualty rates are severe and continue to climb. Medics move quickly from crater to crater, attending to men with broken limbs, horrific shrapnel wounds, and the debilitating effects of shock. By 1400 hours, the situation remains fluid and unpredictable. Commanders finally recognize that the original timetable of advance has utterly failed. Units operate autonomously, relying on local initiative and immediate needs, rather than adhering to central orders. Soldiers use whatever cover is available, fallen trees, destroyed carts, shell craters, while desperately attempting to regain lost ground. Letters written in haste, tucked safely into coat pockets, serve as silent reminders of family, loved ones, and the world that exists beyond the horrors of the battlefield. The human cost is stark and undeniable, and the psychological strain on the soldiers is palpable. The climax of chaos arrives. German soldiers launch yet another desperate assault on fortified French positions situated near the Marne riverbanks. Machine guns tear mercilessly into the advancing ranks. Intense artillery fire disrupts formations and inflicts heavy casualties. The landscape is almost unrecognizable, muddy, cratered, and littered with debris, smoke, and the harrowing evidence of human suffering. Officers try valiantly to rally their troops with shouts and hand signals, but the debilitating combination of extreme fatigue, incessant rain, and relentless enemy fire renders any meaningful coordination nearly impossible. Yet the fighting spirit endures. Small units coordinate daring flanking movements, protect their wounded comrades, and advance despite the overwhelming opposition. By 1630, the battle begins to stabilize, though at a terrible cost. Both sides have suffered extremely heavy losses. German forces, while still holding some ground, have failed to achieve any decisive breakthroughs. French units manage to maintain their defensive integrity, regrouping and reinforcing as needed. Soldiers on both sides clutch personal mementos, a photograph, a letter, a piece of home, to preserve a fragment of normalcy amidst the pervasive chaos. The human element is as crucial as sheer firepower. Commanders take stock of their positions, assess casualties, and evaluate the status of their supply lines. They realize with grim certainty that the battle will continue beyond today, and that victory is far from guaranteed. By 1745, the first hints of strategic consequence begin to emerge. German forces, unable to complete their planned rapid encirclement, are forced to dig in and consolidate their existing positions. The French, seizing the initiative, prepare for counterattacks. Trenches are extended, barbed wires reinforced, and machine guns are repositioned to cover vulnerable sectors. Soldiers, weary and traumatized by the day's events, cling to one another for support. Despite the overwhelming chaos, small acts of humanity, sharing food, tending to the wounded, reading letters aloud, persist as enduring testaments to resilience. End of the second phase. As dusk approaches, the battlefield becomes noticeably quieter, although sporadic artillery fire continues to erupt intermittently. German and French troops alike tend to their wounded, reinforce their defensive positions, and prepare for the long night ahead. Commanders compile reports, assessing which units are capable of further advance, and which require immediate rest or significant reorganization. The chaotic melee of the morning and afternoon leaves both sides with sobering losses, but also with a deeper understanding of the human and tactical limitations of the armies involved. The stage is now set for the final and decisive phase, where critical decisions, sheer endurance, and tactical ingenuity will determine the ultimate turning point of the battle. 5:50, near Châteauroux, France. Dawn breaks over a foggy, dew-laden plain. French reinforcements arrive, their boots sinking into the mud and puddles as they move into position. Artillery is redeployed along ridges and farmhouses, maximizing both line of sight and firing range. French 75mm field guns maintain a rapid firing rate of 16 rounds per minute, while heavier 120mm and 155mm pieces unleash a devastating barrage of 10 to 12 rounds per minute. German units, exhausted from continuous fighting and long marches, hold their positions thinly along the Marne, desperately trying to patch any holes in their lines. Trenches vary in depth from 5 to 2 meters, often hastily dug under intense fire, zigzag to minimize casualties from direct hits. 6:20, French cavalry skirmishes along the riverbank, signaling a renewed offensive. Orders travel slowly. Runners dodge shellfire, shouting commands above the din. German officers frantically coordinate their defense, acutely aware that speed and momentum are now working decisively against them. Mortar fire, 81mm and 120mm, rains down on the German forward positions, disrupting assembly areas and artillery emplacements. Soldiers, soaked and muddy, desperately cling to letters, photographs, or small personal trinkets as talismans, whispering the names of loved ones under their breath. By 7:15, French infantry launches coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. German troops, stretched beyond sustainable limits, face concentrated fire from machine guns, rifle volleys, and relentless artillery barrages. Mortality rates surge dramatically. Entire companies reduced by 30 to 40% in isolated sectors. Officers, improvise in the face of chaos, attempt to rally isolated units, signaling flanks with hand gestures, whistles, or tatter flags. Soldiers move cautiously between shell craters and destroyed outposts, advancing with grim determination, covering their wounded, and occasionally exchanging quiet words of encouragement. The chaos reaches a fever pitch by 8 o'clock. Smoke from artillery, gunfire, and burning villages mingles ominously with the lingering morning fog. Trenches are crammed with men, the dead and wounded intermingle with the living. Corporal Durand writes a hurried note to his mother. We hold, we fall, we endure. Remember me as I am, brave yet human. German soldiers try desperately to plug gaps in their lines with reserves, but the cumulative exhaustion, poor supply, and relentless French assault steadily erode their defensive positions. Artillery density reaches nearly 1 shell every 3 seconds per battery in focal sectors, producing a deafening and disorienting cacophony. By 9:30, French counteroffensives achieve key breakthroughs. Villages previously held by the Germans fall, while field artillery and machine gun nests are captured or neutralized. Communications on the German side collapse completely. Isolated units act independently, some retreating in disarray, others holding their ground desperately. A moment of human clarity emerges amid the carnage. Soldiers share water and rations, attend to the wounded, and read letters aloud as a source of motivation and comfort. The fighting, though mechanized and brutal, remains intensely personal. 10:45, German command recognizes the scope of their strategic failure. The Schlieffen plan's envisioned rapid envelopment has completely unraveled. Units consolidate defensively along secondary lines. Retreating battalions dig in to prevent a complete collapse. French forces, seizing the hard-won momentum, push relentlessly forward, aiming to encircle and destroy the exhausted German forward units. Small groups of German soldiers attempt temporary counterattacks, often resulting in further casualties, highlighting the growing disparity between the initial plan and the grim reality on the ground. By 12 o'clock, the battlefield transforms into a patchwork of chaos and resilience. Trenches, craters, and wreckage form an irregular and ever-shifting front line. French artillery, using observed coordinates, strikes with precision, disrupting assembly points and key movement corridors. Mortality remains devastatingly high, yet small acts of courage persist. A soldier carries a wounded comrade across open ground. A medic risks his own life to bandage a gunshot wound, and letters and photographs continue to pass from hand to hand, anchoring men to their shared humanity amidst the surrounding horror. 13:30, tactical recalibration occurs. French commanders coordinate attacks on weakened German sectors, combining infantry, cavalry, and artillery in well-synchronized waves. German soldiers, many exhausted and demoralized, cling desperately to fragmented defenses. Attempts to reinforce lines are frustrated by distance, communication breakdowns, and relentless enemy fire. The battlefield is dynamic, with positions gained and lost in hours-long oscillations. Human stories. The letter tucked securely in a coat pocket, the whispered encouragement to a friend, the protective act of shielding a comrade, remain as poignant and significant as any strategic maneuver. By 1500 hours, decisive moments arrive. French artillery silences key German guns. Infantry pushes into the trenches, and coordinated assaults fracture defensive lines. German troops, overstretched and exhausted, retreat under intense pressure. Field officers issue last-minute orders, rallying fragments of their units to hold critical points. But the momentum has swung irreversibly to the French. Soldiers on both sides witness the transformative power of the battlefield. It is simultaneously machine-driven destruction and a testament to human endurance. 1645. The tide has definitively turned. German forces begin an organized withdrawal toward the Aisne, attempting to avoid encirclement. French pursuit is cautious but persistent, securing villages, roads, and vital river crossings. Casualty rates are staggering. Some units lose half their numbers in mere hours. Soldiers collect personal effects from their fallen comrades, with letters and photos becoming poignant mementos of sacrifice. The human toll is undeniably evident, yet resilience persists in the face of unimaginable adversity. 1800 hours. Both sides dig in for the evening. The battlefield is scarred beyond recognition. Trenches filled with water, mud-choked craters, shattered trees, and abandoned equipment scattered across the landscape. French troops occupy forward positions, having successfully prevented the German envelopment of Paris. Strategic consequences are immediately apparent. The Schlieffen plan has failed spectacularly. Germany must urgently rethink its overarching strategy, and the Western Front solidifies into a grueling and protracted era of entrenched warfare. The battle leaves an enduring legacy. New military doctrines, improved artillery coordination, and hard-won lessons on the inherent limits of rapid maneuver against a determined defense. 1900 hours. As darkness falls, commanders review maps and compile casualty reports. The Battle of the Marne has undeniably shifted the overall momentum of the war. France retains control of Paris. German advances stall decisively, and the conflict enters a new, protracted, and devastatingly costly phase. Soldiers write letters by candlelight, their words carrying across the front lines. Stories of endurance, survival, and fleeting victories won at a terrible price. The miracle of the Marne, as it will forever be remembered, demonstrates unequivocally the human courage, tactical adaptation, and the unexpected resilience of defenders can overturn even the most meticulously planned military operations. 2000 hours. Silence descends slowly, broken occasionally by distant shellfire or the call of a lone sentry. The battlefield is a tapestry woven from threads of destruction and unwavering determination. The outcome marks not only a pivotal military turning point, but also the grim emergence of modern trench warfare, the immense human cost of industrialized combat, and a stark lesson in the unpredictable nature of war. The first major phase of World War I concludes, leaving commanders and soldiers alike to contemplate strategy, endurance, and the fragile thread that separates ultimate success from catastrophic disaster.